What's up? So soon I'm gonna be going to Florida, and if you know anything about Florida, they have like the best shells there, and I actually like going shelling there every year because we usually go there every year. But I always see these shops with like the biggest shells, and we never actually managed to get like the biggest shells ever, like really big shells. But I want to know if that's a gimmick or if it's actually real. So I'm gonna go to the best shelling place on earth, but first 10-second traveling montage. How it's going to work is there's going to be 3 different locations that get better and better until the final location that might just have the best shells in the world. Let's go. Location 1, the condo, and this was the only clip I got of it.
Bruh. Even these are pretty big, and they're just like right here. If this was full, this would be big.
Just to clarify the rules, the shell has to be fully intact for it to count. And the goal is to find the shell the size of my hand.
Oh, look at this one.
Then I found a little shell that was about 1.25 inches. And there were lots of big and broken shells that didn't actually count. For it to count, it has to be a full shell, like it can't be broken. Then I found another big shell that was about 2.5 inches. And also some strange looking shells. That's a weird shell. Like, look at that shell, that's pretty weird. But it still looks pretty cool, so look at all these. It's like almost the size of my palm as well. Look at that. A good patch of shells like over by the balcony, so yeah. Overall, the condo was pretty mid, and I ended up finding lots of tiny shells. Until I found a wide clam that was slightly bigger than the other shell. The condo shells could have been better, 6.1. But this shell right here was slightly bigger than the previous shell I found. Then I went to location 2, which was the beach. Or specifically the Siesta Keys beach. And it just rained, so there were barely any shells.
Bruh.
Either most of the ones I found were broken or really tiny. But then I found a pretty decent clam.
Nice.
Then I found a pretty good spot on the beach, which was the tree roots, because the shells would get stuck but in between the gaps where the roots were. And I found a couple 1-inch shells which were pretty decent. Then I found a shell that had a cool pattern but wasn't really the biggest shell, but it still looked pretty cool. Another good spot was this tree because all the shells got trapped in the roots. I was trying to aim for this big clam here, but it was broken. And when I was walking back, I also found a really cool shell. But something crazy happened. Not only did I find some sick shells, I found this giant shell being 4.5 inches, crushing the old record. This shell wasn't as big but had a cool pattern. I would give location 2 a 7.8. The third and final location is Sanibel Island, being the best location when you search up on Google. But the question is it worthy for that spot? With the 2-hour drive, I was ready to see if it was actually true. Yeah, it's like there's big waves.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
And there's also some weird tower that looked pretty sus. If this piece was like a full clam, it would have been like a giant shell, like this, the size of my hand. But it has to be an intact shell. Then I found this weird thing in the water that looked like a bar of soap.
Bruh.
After that, the shells started to get a lot better and were intact, and I even found some cool purple shells that looked actually really cool. But the only problem is the shells aren't the size of my hand. And to find the good shells, you have to like look under the shallow water. Overall, it's not that bad. There's actually some like good, there's a lot of clams, but there's not a lot of like oval shells that I found at like the hotel place. For this spot, you just have to grab a handful of shells, and you could see they were like mostly broken shells. Look at that, that's probably one of the best ones I found. Then I somehow found this really good shell having really cool colors, but do you also see this shell right here? It was a full clam.
Nice.
Look at that shell, that's like awesome. You could see that there's a lot of shells here, but they were just like those generic shells. And there were also some really nice looking clams. Also, I found a big shell that was broken, but probably would have been about this size. And then after that, there were a lot of different shells with like a tan design to it on the clam. But that's only the start. So basically what happened was, we were going for a swim, and you know that weird tower from earlier? Just in front of it, we started to like step around to like feel the ground, and we kept pulling out shell after shell, and we must have got over 50 plus shells. The shells were insane, with some being giant clams, which I had a lot of those, or pine cone like shells, but others having really cool colors like the purple clams in the back. I'd give it a 10 out of 10. Now, the only thing that I learned about this video is that you should